Welcome back to the Kriya Yoga podcast. In today's podcast, we're going to be listening to one of our Kriya Yoga Sunday services. The topic for this Kriya Yoga online Sunday service was the spiritual importance of having a human body. Now, after the Sunday service, we followed up with an hour and a half Q&A session. And a lot of important topics came up, a lot of important questions about that theme were asked. And so what I'm going to do is after we go through the Sunday service, after we listen to that, I'm going to speak to some of the additional themes and topics to help make sure that we're extremely clear on what I mean when I say that having a human body is extremely spiritually important. Before we dive into that, I do have a couple of announcements. First of all, we're at that time of year where it's important to begin considering if you want to participate in the 2-year Kriya Yoga apprenticeship program, which begins every January. There are a few prerequisites for that course and some reading that you need to do before you apply to that program. And so around June, July, if you get started now, you'd be ready to apply for our upcoming Kriya Yoga apprenticeship course, which will begin in 2027. And every year we accept around 25 students for that program. So again, if you've been thinking about it, if it's something you're inspired towards to deepen your understanding of Kriya Yoga, meditation, and your spiritual practice, this is the time to be looking into that process and beginning your application. Also, coming up in August 22nd, we are going to begin a new course of study. We're going to be exploring the Bhutajaya practice of Patanjali, and this will be an 8-week course focusing on my new book, which will be coming out June 3rd, called The Samadhi of Water. The purpose of this course is to go into the samyama practices of Patanjali, which train you to experience samadhi regularly, consistently. Earlier in the spring, we did a 6-week study group on this material, and it worked wonderfully. So we decided to offer it again in the fall. If this is something you're interested in, you can go to kriyayogaonline.com and you can go to the blog section and you can find the blog post entitled The Samadhi of Water Class, Patanjali's Jaya Samyama. This is an excellent methodology to give you a deeper understanding of the Yoga Sutras and Patanjali, and also to deepen your meditation practice. And this program will be on a donation basis. So go to kriyayogaonline.com, look at the blog, find the Samadhi of Water Class, Patanjali's Jaya Samyama, and you can apply and register there. Along with this course, as I mentioned, June 3rd, 2026, I will be releasing a new book called The Samadhi of Water. This explores the phases of samadhi and how to access those phases consistently. And for the month of June and July, that book will be available at as low of a cost as I can offer through my publisher. This book has been in the works for several years, and it's really a collection of material based on several classes I've given on this topic. The first part of the book is related to the process itself, understanding the process, and then the entire second section of the book is a question and answer section that's been developed through the questions asked during our previous sessions together. So let's go ahead and listen to our Sunday service, which was originally given on May 24th, 2026. The topic is why a human life is so spiritually important. All right. Well, welcome to our Kriya Yoga Sunday service for May. Every time I watch those videos with Roy that we put at the beginning of our service, I feel like I'm right back there sitting in the front row with him. And it always reminds me of how important it is to have times like this to come together even when it's online. Our retreats are getting ready to get started. In June, we have our retreat at the Himalayan Institute, and then a few others after that, and one in Ireland. And we did not have any retreats this spring. And I didn't realize how much I actually missed getting together with everybody until the first retreat wasn't going to be until June. So we have time now online to be together. And as Roy was saying in the video that we were watching earlier, um, the attunement in this process, the connection to the lineage, to the tradition, to the experience, it doesn't have to be limited to distance. So just maintaining that same mental space, maintaining that same awareness, that helps you stay in that field. Today, we're going to talk about an interesting theme, and that is that the spiritual the spiritual life really depends on the fact that we have a human body. Maybe you've heard this before. Maybe you've heard people talk about this, and there's a lot of philosophy and a lot of background information that goes into this as it relates to the doctrine of karma. We're not going to go into that because that is a lot, and it would take probably a whole weekend, if not more, to discuss. But what I want to talk about today is, why is a human life so spiritually important? For many reasons, but I want to talk about this because I'm hoping to inspire you to recognize that you need to make the most of your time here, spiritually speaking. So there's all kinds of life: plant life, animal life, divine life, human life. And of all the stages of evolution, of all the beings that exist in the world, the only one that has the greatest capacity for realization, spiritual growth, and spiritual freedom is the human life. Humans have a capacity to utilize their willpower, to take action, to be intentional, to put their attention in a particular direction. Other forms of life don't necessarily have that capacity in the way that humans do. Animals, plants, other types of life that don't necessarily have the ability to think or to talk in the way we do, they are more instinctually based. They run on instinct, they run on predefined programming. On the other side of human life, we have the idea of devas, the gods, goddesses, angels, divine beings. Well, those are also often just on autopilot. And this is why in a lot of scriptures you might hear people say things like, when a yogi reaches a very profound state of awareness, the gods themselves will come to them and invite them into the heavenly realms. And the advice there is to say, no, I'm not going. And the question might be, well, why wouldn't you want to go into a heavenly realm? Because if you go into a heavenly realm, you are potentially releasing your capacity to take effective action in your life, to set positive intentions, spiritually directed intentions. You're just going to move into a realm that is full of light. It is enjoyable. It is wonderful, but not a lot's going to be changing or happening there for you, spiritually speaking. And we can see this. We can get a sense of this. I want to make this kind of experiential for you so you understand a little bit more than just the philosophy behind it. We can see this as it relates to um, our own experiences of unconsciousness and our own experiences of dreaming. I don't know if you know many sleepwalkers, people who just walk around in their sleep and they don't remember what they're doing. Well, somehow these individuals, they're not present, but they're able to go cook food or go for a walk or, do the laundry, but they're not present in there. So they're in an unconscious state, but the body itself is able to act. And when we think about positive dreams, nice dreams, pleasant dreams. When we're in that nice space, when we're in those pleasant dreams, most of us aren't really active in that. We're just observing the waves of the dream as they come over us. And then of course, when the momentum of that dream passes, we wake up and we're back in our human experience again. So when we're thinking about these levels of beings, for example, uh, animals and plants and insects and unicellular organisms and even rocks and so on, they possess more of a tamasic, um heavy, unconscious autopilot kind of existence with some rajas in there, of course, because they have to be active. And the deva side of this experience possesses more sattva. And sattva is wonderful, and we want to cultivate sattva. But in that sattvic state, there's not enough rajas and there's not enough grounding of tamas to allow action to be taken effectively. So when we experience profound sattvic states, when we experience profound blissful states, that's nice, but it's not spiritually transformational. However, the human form has an equal capacity, for the most part, of tamas, rajas, and sattva, which means it has the capacity to be aware and clear, sattva. It has the capacity to take action, rajas, and it has the capacity to be grounded in the form of tamas. So human beings alone have this particular experience. Now, in yoga, you probably are familiar with the idea of learning to remain awake and clear and present in the waking state, the dreaming state, and the deep sleep state. So when we practice yoga, when we are circulating life force through the spinal pathway and we're cultivating more presence, when we are contemplating uh, spiritual truth, when we are existing as the seer, when we're practicing all of these things, what we are doing is we are using our willpower. We are choosing to use this human form, this human mind, this human body, this human energy field to abide in a state of clarity, in a state of sattva. And we are learning to bring that into the subtler experience of our spirit, of our soul, which would be more like the dreaming state. And then we're learning to remain present, to be there, to be as awake and as aware as you hopefully all are right now listening to this in the deep sleep state. Why is this important? This is important because as a human being, through yoga meditation, we're able to do this. And that means that should we experience more tamas, more heaviness, more unconsciousness, should we slip a bit, we're still there. The seer is still present. Should we begin to experience a wonderful, blissful state, we don't trip out on it and lose ourselves in it. We are still there watching. We are still there present, which means we can take action in those states. We can continue the process forward. And Mr. Davis was talking about in that video we were watching just before this, he said Yogananda had told him that he must go all the way. He must wake up completely. He must go all the way, and that he could do it. Well, we can all do this. And that's why we have Kriya Yoga. That's why we have meditation. That's why we have spiritual techniques and processes. But all of those processes are to give us the capacity to remain present no matter what's going on. No matter what's going on. I can think about times when I've not quite, well, I can think about times where maybe my awareness has been duller, not as clear, or emotionally I haven't been as settled and calm. But because of the Kriya Yoga practice, because of the yogic practice, it was as if I could see that. I knew it was going on, and I still had the agency to behave appropriately. If I was starting to zone out, I could always pull myself back and stay present. Or if I was getting caught up in a heightened emotional experience, it's okay to experience these things, But because of the consistent practice of yoga and meditation, you learn to say, oh, wait a minute, but I'm still the seer. And then as you learn to dream, as you have deep sleep states, you also recognize that you're present in that experience too. So this can only happen, for the most part, in a human form. Now, it can happen in other forms if you've already had a human form where you've developed this capacity. So that's why if you are a human being right now, and I'm assuming you all are because you know how to use Zoom and the internet to get here, you know how to use your fingers, you know how to think, you know how to sit still for a little bit. If you have that capacity, you are in a very sweet spot in the um, expression of evolution. You have the opportunity to wake up completely. And this is not easy. So let's be real clear about that. What I'm telling you have the opportunity to do is not an easy thing. It takes a lot of attention, it takes a lot of persistence, it takes a lot of discipline. But this is the best time to be doing it. And no matter what life you're in, no matter what's going on in your life, you have this opportunity. Meaning, if your life is going wonderfully, you have this opportunity. If your life is a total wreck right now, you have this opportunity. If you're bored out of your mind and you don't know what you're supposed to be doing, you have this opportunity. Because all of those things, wonderful life, terrible life, bored out of your mind life, or a mixture, we all usually have a mixture. That's just content that's coming and going. Every human being is going to go through phases of goodness, phases of struggle, phases of boredom, a mixture of both. Sometimes they're longer than others, sometimes they're shorter than others, depending on your astrological makeup or your how you live your life. But all of us have this capacity. And no matter where you are, if you start taking actions to develop yourself through meditation, even if it's only 2 minutes a day, that is a drop in the bucket, and that builds up over time. Um, if you begin engaging your meditation as regularly as possible, and you begin working towards embodying the yamas and the niyamas, and what's the first one? Harmlessness. Let's just focus on the first two: harmlessness and truthfulness. If you just focused on those two things, more sattva, more light would start to illuminate your consciousness. You would be able to understand more fully why you are here. You would be able to feel a greater sense of peace, ease, and wisdom within your meditation. And personally, I don't think peace and ease are the important gauges of whether your meditation is successful or not. I think that's good because it helps you relax and it shows that you're at least doing the techniques well enough that your body is responding. But for our purposes, spiritually speaking, the real, I don't know if benefit or the way that you can really define your progress through meditation is your sense of intuitive wisdom, intuitive understanding, where you learn how to direct your awareness within and you can start to trust yourself. And I don't mean your personality, although that's part of it. I mean, you can start to trust that you are connected to a greater field of intelligence, a greater field of wisdom, a greater field of light, and you can live from that. Mr. Davis would tell me, and also many others, I'm sure, he would always say, always always live from your inner consciousness of God. Yes, you have to be appropriate to the world around you, but if you can live with a sense of trust in this inner consciousness guiding you, that you are a part of, that you are illuminated by, that's the best way to know that your meditation practice is doing well. Because if you have that, whether life is going well or whether life is going difficult, you have a compass and you can navigate through it. And when you can learn to navigate your life in this way, then it doesn't matter in the long term, uh, sort of the content of the life, spiritually speaking. It matters in other ways, but not necessarily as it relates to our spiritual understanding. Now, this is also why, um, when it comes to our meditation path, we don't want to try to define our success through how easy life is. In fact, most of the time when you truly begin to engage your spiritual path, life tends to become a little thing a little bit different than easy. Because when you make that choice that you want to wake up clearly, that you want to be present, well, then life says, okay, well, here are all the areas that you're not present. So deal with that. And sometimes that can feel a bit overwhelming. But you've heard me say this before, and I'll say it again. One thing I've learned to do to prevent that overwhelm is, instead of saying, I want to wake up, give me all the lessons I need right now, I say, I want to wake up. You don't need to give it to me all at once. Please just give me the lessons I need. Show me what I need to understand in bite-sized increments. I've learned that that is an important thing to say, because then things will come your way and you'll be able to resolve them. But as you go through this process, as you surmount that initial hurdle of the strain that might come along when you're presented with the things where you are unconscious, then you feel good. Good in the way that a person who is capable feels good. Good in the way that when you've been able to tap into this inner wisdom and you've been able to engage life to the best of your ability, you know whatever comes my way can be handled. So the goodness is more of a sense of confidence, not egotistical confidence, just knowing. And when you have that kind of knowing, that confidence, that kind of inner attunement, stress goes way down. Because as life comes at you, you'll know what to do. One one teacher, Swami Veda Bharati, someone had asked him one time, "How do I know? How do I know in my spiritual path, what I need to be doing next? How do I know when it's time to grow or to change, or when to take action, when to be more disciplined, or when to relax?" And he said, it's a lot like driving a car. He says, when you're driving a car, you just keep driving. And if there's a curve coming up, you'll know, turn the car. And so if you just pay attention, if you just stay present, you will be able to observe when it's time to change, when it's time to pivot, when it's time to do something different. And if you're going down the road and you see the curve and you don't change, well, you're going to know immediately that you should have changed. So in our own spiritual experience, in our own life experience, sometimes we know when we've gone over the curve instead of taking the curve, when life gives us an opportunity to shift gears, or to shift a direction, and because of fear or anxiety, we don't take it, and then all of a sudden we're on a real bumpy road. So in that case, you want to pause a moment, take a step back and see, all right, how do I get back on the path? But this is only truly possible, for the most part, through a human life. Because right now, you have enough presence, enough awareness to know what you need to be doing. The video we watched was the 6 questions every person should ask. That was what Roy was talking about there. The 6 questions every person should ask. If I recall, the last question was, am I doing everything I know I should be doing to wake up spiritually? And this is not complicated. This is not a complicated path. The things we need to know, the things we need to do are what? Have a regular spiritual practice, meditative practice. And you don't have to be excessive about it. Just have one and engage it every day. Even if you don't feel like it, even if you think you're going to be terrible at it, just sit down and do it. In time, that'll all fall away and you will be engaged in it. We need to take care of ourselves and others, be responsible, and engage that with a sense of love and devotion. And that brings in those two qualities of harmlessness, and truthfulness. And then we need to be curious about what are we as a spiritual being in this human form right now, having this experience? How does spirit relate to the world through us? And of course, eat your fruits and your vegetables and exercise regularly and get enough rest. Do those things. Do those things, and you will be doing everything that you need to be doing in order to wake up. And this is another area where life can sometimes feel hard, spiritually speaking, because often we want it all. We want all the stuff that people sell us on our social media. We want to go on the vacations all the time. We want to have all the money in the world. We don't want to compromise anything. Well, that's not how life works. Sometimes we have to compromise. Sometimes we don't get everything that we need. Sometimes we can't go on the vacation. Sometimes relationships don't work out. Sometimes people die. That happens to everybody. So that's the content that we're driving our car through. But no matter what's going on, we can do these other things that I just listed: meditating regularly, praying regularly, every day, um, practicing harmlessness and truthfulness in every situation. Get used to it. Figure out how to do it. Sometimes that's difficult for us because we haven't been raised in families where we know what truth is, or we're often tormented, or um, things don't go so well when we step into our own truth. But we have to find a way to do that if we really truly want to wake up in this life. Get enough rest, eat your fruits and your vegetables, and then be curious, spiritually speaking. And I really want to focus on this idea of being curious, spiritually speaking, because to be spiritually awake is really to be knowledgeable. And I don't mean book smart, like you've read all the books and you can recite all the Sanskrit and all that. I mean knowledgeable in the sense of you've had a direct, true experience of what you are as a spiritual being. And so having that constant wondering, what does it mean that I have a spirit, that I am a spirit? What does it mean that I am not defined by my body, by my mind, by my relationships? What is this eternal aspect of myself that is always there, always present? Just having that wondering consistently brings the knowledge, brings the information into your experience. It can bring the knowledge and information into your experience in the way that you find the appropriate books. They just come to you. Someone starts talking to you about books that are extremely helpful. You read them and you say, this is exactly what I've been trying to figure out. It can happen that way, especially if you're a reader and you're an intellectual type. Or just simply by the fact of sitting down to meditate and wondering, being curious, truly curious, you will start to have experiences, understanding, flashes of insight where you become aware of the truth of your being. And that's not dramatic. If it's dramatic, just relax a little bit. You're probably just having hormonal rushes or emotionalism overtaking you. It's just like a knowing. When you talk to someone that you love deeply and they have information you want and you say, "What's this mean?" And they say, "Oh, it means this." And you say, "Oh, okay. Now you know." That's how it works. That's how you experience it within yourself. Um, Before we conclude this little bit of a talk, I want to describe to you something that I've done a lot lately. And I've been able to do this because uh, I'm not an animal. I'm not a deva. I'm a human being with a capacity to stay present and to wonder about these things and not get pulled into blissful states and not be pulled down into unconscious states. If those things arise, I'm able to acknowledge them and then practice pranayama or meditation to return to center. But one thing I've been doing lately, and maybe we'll try to do this in the meditation that follows, I've been contemplating communication, knowledge, and how we learn things. And I've been contemplating the fact that animals communicate with each other. They have a capacity to communicate. We just put in a little 55-gallon pond in our garden, and all of a sudden, all these toads showed up. and they're calling to themselves like, oh, that's neat. There's a toad. And next thing you know, there's toads everywhere. And how did that happen? One toad showed up and he did his little call, and then they all heard it and they all came. And right now we're having a conversation and you're listening to me and information is being imparted. So there is a capacity for information to be shared across species. Well, not across species, but species can communicate with each other and we can communicate with each other and so on. Well, I reflected on the fact that we live in a universe that clearly has some kind of intelligence to it. If there was no intelligence to the universe, none of this would be happening. And if there is a greater intelligence, in yoga sutras will probably refer to this as Ishvara, or any divinity that you prefer, then these divinities, these intelligences, these illuminations pervade um, everything. And so frogs can communicate with each other. If I can communicate with you, then clearly this vast, infinite, universal intelligence can communicate with us. It would be really stupid if something that intelligent, something that powerful, something that big could not communicate with our little brains, right? So it must be possible. And so what I've been doing in meditation is after I go through my meditation techniques and I feel fairly centered, I think about that and I kind of feel out as though I'm acknowledging how amazing it is that the earth spins around the sun and that the clouds move and that every spring the toads come and we're able to have these conversations and that I can write books and listen to music. I think about just how beautiful and immense and intelligent just that is by itself. And I acknowledge that there's likely a much greater intelligence out there making all of this possible. And so I imagine that I'm kind of like sending out like radio waves. Okay, here's what I'm curious about spiritually. Here's what I'm working through. Here's what I'm dealing with. I'm open to you communicating with me in any way that it works. I kind of send that out. And and what usually happens is someone will show up in my life and give me information. Or I'll pick up a book that I haven't looked at in years and it's there. And sometimes in meditation, just the information dawns, like the experience will dawn. You know, you can contemplate amazing things like, what am I as the seer? And if you contemplate that enough, eventually, yes, you'll step into that. And that's because you've sent it out. This cosmic consciousness listened, and then it found a way, however it could, to organize this life experience so that you could have that realization. And this is what we can do as a human being. We have that capacity. We're not lost in blissful states like a divinity. Because here's the thing, if you get lost in blissful states like a divinity, you're eventually going to come back. That's not eternal. So that's why, as a yogi, our goal is to focus on that which is eternal, which is the seer, the witness, the experience of kaivalya, the experience of pure consciousness. Because once you become established in that, the gunas can do whatever they want. The divine realms can come and go. You can fall into darkness and unconsciousness from time to time, but you still know what you are. And when you know that you are not that which is changing, pain is done. And that's the whole purpose of the Yoga Sutras. Patanjali says that by learning, by having this viveka kyati, this discernment between what is seen and the seer, pain ends. It doesn't say become as sattvic as possible and try to stay there for as long as you can, because eventually the cycle comes back around again. He does say cultivate sattva, cultivate experiences of sattva, of love, of light and clarity, but not for the purpose of defining yourself by it and always staying there, but to illuminate your life experience so that you can step back, recognize that you are the seer, pure consciousness, infinite spirit, and so on. So in that sense, the cultivation of sattva is not to push you into becoming a divine being. The cultivation of sattva is to have so much illumination in your life that the wisdom is ever present and you know what you are, and then you're done in a good way. You can come out of the oven now, you're done. So Think about this when you reflect upon your life. No matter what troubles are going on, everyone's got troubles. Everyone deals with health issues, stupid relationship issues, family members that are a pain in the ass. I mean, I don't know. If you don't have a problem like that, email me. I want to know who you are and I want to talk to you. But most people have these things to deal with. And rather than worry about that, focus on your spiritual development and then attend to that to the best of your ability and let it be enough. Let God take care of the rest. Be as appropriate as be as appropriate as possible. But remember, this lifetime as a human being, you are here to wake up. And I want to encourage you to do that. Now, if you decide that you're not here to wake up, that's perfectly fine. Go try to become a deva. Uh, do whatever you want to do. But think back after you've spent a few thousand years in the blissful state. Oh, wait a minute. There was this guy named Ryan. He was trying to help me get beyond this. Maybe a few thousand years ago, I should have listened to him. I, as Jasmine will tell you, I like saying "I told you so," and I'll tell you so in a few thousand years if you want. No, just kidding. I'm not going to do that. All right, well, let's meditate together, and we'll try to incorporate some of these ideas. Okay, now there are a few things I want to be clear on about what we just heard. Number one, as I discussed moving into a deva realm, a deva experience, in the past, in the Understanding the Holy Science class, or even in the Understanding the Holy Science book, you've heard me discuss how it is important to illuminate your consciousness, to move into the deva realm, to the experience of the deva realm, to even become a deva, an angelic being, a being of light, a being full of sattva. Now, there are a few ways that's done, and the way I want to encourage you to do that is by doing it consciously. And in the previous talk, I acted like, well, you don't necessarily want to get lost in the deva realm. That's right. You don't want to get lost in the deva realm. You don't want to get lost in this overwhelming experience of sattva, this overwhelming experience of light. What you want to do is you want to enter into the experience consciously. And all yogic practices, when they're applied correctly, help you to do that. And to understand this fundamental difference, we need to know what are the ways that you access, that you learn to experience, that you move into a devic realm, a realm of light, a realm beyond the human incarnation. And one of the easiest ways that's done, which anyone can do it, is just be a good person. Think of others, be kind to others, be generous, be charitable, follow the yamas and the niyamas, be compassionate, take care of others. All these things, they generate a momentum towards light, towards sattva, towards clarity, towards the devic realm. However, if you do that without being consciously aware, then you're accumulating all of this momentum towards the realm of light. We could say very loosely that you're accumulating all this karma to experience the realm of light, the devic realm. But if you don't simultaneously develop viveka, discernment, then you're a wonderful person. You do all kinds of good things. So your next lifetime, theoretically, is so much better because you have all that light, all that clarity, all that love, all that well-being stored up. So maybe you'll just have a wonderful human life, or maybe you will spend some time in the angelic realms. But if you are not developing discernment, you're not going to be conscious there, which means that you're going to enjoy it. You're not going to think much about it. But then once it all runs out, you're going to have to start all over again. So being a good person, doing good deeds is all wonderful. It's all extremely important. Being compassionate, taking care of others, nurturing the well-being of others, that's all wonderful. But that will perpetuate goodness and well-being, but it needs to be perpetuated with discernment, with viveka, with discrimination. And that's where yoga comes into play. Because as you develop your capacity through yoga practice, through the 8 limbs of yoga, through Kriya Yoga, through Samyama, and so on, you are able to remain awake and present in these subtler states, these subtler fields. And then even when you are experiencing really wonderful, joyous states, you still know deep down inside that that's not really who you are, and that you really need to let go of this if you want to experience kaivalya, this culmination of yoga practice. So I just wanted to clear up that confusion, that I want you to experience all the good things that are available to you. And I also want to encourage you to engage the yamas and niyamas for the goodness of the world, for the goodness of all beings everywhere. But while you are doing that, continue to develop discernment. That way, when you enter these subtler realms, you do so with presence, with awareness, so that you can continue your process rather than just zoning out in all of this well-being and thinking, well, why do I need to figure anything out? This is just so nice. This is just so lovely. We have to remember in yogic scriptures, it says that the yogi endures pleasure and pain while seeking knowledge. It doesn't say that the yogi is just saturating oneself with all of these good things. It says the yogi learns to endure pleasure and pain while seeking knowledge, while seeking this discrimination. So that is the most important thing. And while in the human form, this is easier, but again, we are meant to ascend, to transcend, to experience these subtler fields of light. And if we bring in that viveka, that discernment, that discrimination, if we develop that capacity in the form of being human, then as we experience these divine realms, it persists. And we can continue onward rather than getting lost in the joy or just dropping the ball because we think to ourselves, well, why do I need to do anything else? Everything's great. It has nothing to do with how good or how bad things are. It all comes down to realization. And it is the yogi that is aware of this. The yogi who has the goal to maintain this presence, no matter which realm they are in. Now, in our Q&A, someone asked, well, how do you maintain a human birth? How do you keep having a human birth? How do you become a human being, stay a human being, so that you don't slide back into rajas and tamas and get lost in unconsciousness and delusion, so going the other direction? How do you avoid that? And that's really very easy. You simply have to maintain the qualities of a human being. So, for example, what is different about a human being than an animal or a plant or a rock? Well, a human being can think. A human being can reason. A human being can be profoundly creative. A human being is not defined by their instincts, by their sense organs, by the elements. And so if you want to avoid backsliding a bit in this theory of reincarnation, well, then don't live like an animal. Don't let your senses drive you. Don't just be interested in sex and food and nothing else. Learn, grow, read, be creative. If you do all of this, then you're going to maintain that momentum in the human realm. Explore philosophy, learn languages, practice meditation, control your breathing, become disciplined, learn why austerity can be such an enjoyable thing in the long term. If you do all of these things, then you are expressing distinctly human qualities. And so all of that spiritual advice about not giving in to the senses, not following every whim and every desire, it's not necessarily just because of moral purity. It's because a lot of these sages, these spiritual figures, didn't want you to slide back into unconsciousness. So they're just telling you how to avoid doing that. Now, of course, this theory and this doctrine of karma is vast, and it may seem like I've oversimplified a lot, and I feel like I did. but you get the general idea of where we're going with this material. And ultimately, you don't have to overthink it. It's extremely simple. If you want to maintain a human birth, well, don't act like an animal. If you have animal tendencies, no problem. Maybe this is your first human birth, and so you've got a lot of momentum of these animal tendencies. That's normal. That's just the way it is when you transition from one phase to another phase. But if you want to stay where you are, you have to maintain the quality of this incarnation. It's just like if you're a mediocre musician and you're trying to be a better musician, well, maybe you get better and you start playing with really good musicians. Well, if you want to keep playing with good musicians, you have to maintain that level of musical integrity. If you let it slide or you don't care as much anymore, it's going to be harder for you to stay within that crowd, within that scene. So the same is true in this experience. Now, as far as continuing onward to being able to benefit from experiencing your inner light, the light of source, the Devic realm, well, it's okay to do that too. Just be a good person and do it for the right reasons. In the Bhagavad Gita, there are some statements about what is sattvic faith. So focus on developing sattvic faith. And as you continue to be a good person, simultaneously cultivate your discrimination, your yogic practice, so that you can see through all of the cycling of the gunas. We don't want to get bound and caught up in rajas and tamas, hyperactivity, constant transformation, unconsciousness and inertia. We don't want to get caught up in that. But we also don't want to space out into these realms of light. That's just going in another direction. But it's still getting caught up in the gunas, the primordial powers, the cosmic powers of nature. Now, the beautiful thing about sattva is that it does give you clarity to see things. So as yogis, yes, we want to cultivate sattva, but again, doing it with discernment, with knowledge, with clarity, with discrimination. And that's what leads to complete spiritual freedom, which is the whole point of this podcast, the Kriya Yoga lineage, and anything that we are involved in here. And just an example of how to make sure you are doing things for the right reasons, which perpetuate more sattva. A clear example would be charity, giving. Well, a lot of people give and they make a big show of it. They put on their website, oh, look how wonderful I am supporting all of these people. They want people to see how good they are. Well, they're still doing good, but the reason they're doing it is a rajasic reason. It's said that if you want to donate to others, if you want to support others, if you want to really benefit from giving and charity, there are two reasons to do it. One is out of reverence. So, for example, whenever I would spend time with my spiritual teacher, I wanted to support his mission. So when I donated what I could to him, I was doing it because I had a great sense of reverence for what he embodied and what he was doing. So there's a sense of support, but also reverence in that experience. Now, the other reason that is a good reason to practice charity and donation is out of compassion for those who are less fortunate that can't take care of themselves the way you've been able to take care of yourself. So your heart goes out. You really want to see them thrive. So these are the two reasons to practice charity, out of reverence or out of compassion. Those are the good reasons. If you're doing it to make a show of it, just to feel better about yourself, or to think that you're going to save the world by doing all of this, that's not a sattvic reason. That's not a reason that's going to promote clarity within your life. And all of the activities that we engage in that we think are good activities, we do need to take some time to reflect upon, why am I really doing this? Why am I really doing this? And when you're doing it from a sense of integrity and truthfulness and care, that's going to be what shifts your experience to one of more lightness and clarity. Okay, I just wanted to take some time to speak to those things because after the Sunday service, going on a walk with Jasmine, discussing what came up, and also the 90-minute Q&A that we did after that, it felt like these things needed to be talked about. So if you want to participate in any of these Sunday services, you can go to the Kriya Yoga Alliance, kriyayogaalliance.com, and there's a link for a Sunday service. I give a Sunday service once a month, and then several other students of Roy Eugene Davis, who is a student of Paramahansa Yogananda, also give talks. And if you want to participate in the monthly question and answer sessions, you're welcome to become a Patreon member at kriyayogaonline.com, or you can take any of our classes at the Kriya Yoga Online Ashram, which is at kriya-yoga.teachable.com. Currently on the Patreon site, the Kriya Yoga Online Patreon community, we are nearing the end of a course, one class released every month on the Chitta Prasadanam Sutras in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, which are essentially preparations for experiencing samadhi, how to get yourself in that flow, that momentum, to where samadhi becomes more natural through your meditation process. I'm contemplating what to do next. And currently I'm thinking about going through chapter 12 of the Bhagavad Gita, the chapter on bhakti and devotion, because there's a lot of good material in there for yogis. Devotion can be extremely helpful and extremely clarifying and supportive of the meditative samadhi experience. So we'll see where we go with that. Either way, thanks for tuning in. It was good to be with you. Thank you for tuning into this episode of the Kriya Yoga Podcast. To learn more about Kriya Yoga meditation, you can visit us at kriyayogaonline.com, where you can find information about current book releases, online classes, and in-person retreats throughout the year. If you're interested in supporting this podcast, visit us at the Kriya Yoga Online Patreon community at patreon.com/Kriya Yoga.